Everything changed in a matter of seconds. 3 agonizing seasons of climbing. 3 seasons of hoping against hope. And now? Now, the Houston Texans stand on the absolute, terrifying edge of a cliff. Listen to me when I say this. The 2026 season isn't just another year on the football calendar. It is a high-stakes, do-or-die thriller that will quite literally either forge a dynasty or completely shatter a franchise for a generation. A failure here plunges this team right back into the dark ages of quarterback purgatory. It wastes the absolute prime years of generational defensive talents, and it leaves an entire city to endlessly wonder what could have been. Welcome back to NFL Nexus, your home for the deepest, most cinematic dives into the gridiron. Before we uncover the brutal reality facing Houston today, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment down below on what you thought. And hey, if you want to support the channel even further, become a channel member today. Okay, let's dive into this. Because what is happening in Houston right now is a ticking clock, and the alarm is just about to sound.
Look closely at these words from Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer. I want you to really truly let this sobering reality check sink in. The Texans are in a championship window without question, and the defense is already at that level. All the questions are on offense. Man, it is a chilling statement when you break it down to its core. We're talking about a defense where Will Anderson Jr. is out there generating pressure at an astronomical, truly elite rate. We're talking about a secondary where Derek Stingley Jr. is putting opposing #1 receivers on an absolute lockdown island every single Sunday. The ultimate prize in the National Football League, the Lombardi Trophy, is sitting right there in the room with them. The championship window is wide open, but there is a fatal, massive structural flaw that is actively threatening to slam that window right shut on their fingers. This is not a team that needs to learn how to win. This is a team suffering from a fundamental, critical imbalance.
You can feel it, can't you? The immense, almost suffocating pressure building right under head coach DeMeco Ryans is palpable. We are now entering year 4 of his tenure. The man has engineered 3 consecutive winning seasons. He has brought home 2 division titles. He has won 3 playoff games. But every single year, they hit this invisible, totally impenetrable wall. They have stalled repeatedly, agonizingly, right at the doorstep of the AFC Championship. Think about that for a second. They have never, in the history of the entire franchise, reached a conference championship, let alone a Super Bowl. So the grace period, it is completely over. The, hey, we're just happy to be here phase of the rebuild is dead and buried. The expectation now is a ring, and the staggering weight of that immense expectation is resting entirely on just one side of the ball.
The nightmare scenario unfolding down in Houston is a stark, chilling contrast. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. On one side, you have an elite defense. And I don't use that word lightly. We are talking about a top 1 or 2 unit in the entire NFL. There's a very, very real case to be made that they have an above-average starter at literally all 11 positions on the field. They are completely, undeniably Super Bowl ready. But on the other side, a struggling, sputtering, broken offense. Last year, they possessed a bottom 10 run game that completely lacked any sort of physical potency. When they desperately needed a crucial 2 yards to move the chains on early downs, they were routinely stuffed dead at the line of scrimmage. They featured an inconsistent offensive line where, outside of a solitary breakout campaign from guard Ed Ingram, virtually every single piece struggled to communicate and pick up opposing defensive stunts. You simply cannot win a modern Super Bowl dragging a massive anchor like that behind you.
So what does this all mean? The crucial point is this. The central conflict of the 2026 season for the Houston Texans isn't the Kansas City Chiefs, and it isn't the Baltimore Ravens, it is themselves. The ultimate roadblock is their own floundering offense. It is the absolute tragic possibility of wasting the sheer physical prime of a historically elite defense simply because the offense cannot match their intensity. Imagine the simmering, toxic frustration inside that locker room. The defense takes the field, they execute a flawless scheme, they get a brutal 3rd down stop, they hand the ball back, and then they have to stand on the sideline and watch the offense go 3 and out because they can't establish the line of scrimmage. That is the roadblock. That is the exact kind of poison that can rot a championship culture from the inside out.
Now, I know what you're thinking. It is incredibly easy, almost lazy honestly, to just point the finger directly at the quarterback. But the issue with Houston's offense is far more complex and, frankly, far more deeply rooted than just C.J. Stroud. Yes, his last 2 seasons have been an absolute roller coaster, but we have to look at the granular details of the ecosystem that completely failed him in 2025. It wasn't just him making mental mistakes. It was a complete and total lack of early down rushing potency that put him in impossible, highly predictable 3rd and long situations where defensive coordinators could just pin their ears back and hunt. It was a terrifying lack of depth behind their alpha wide receiver Nico Collins and tight end Dalton Schultz, because when the injury bug inevitably bit those two, the entire offensive ecosystem simply disintegrated. The play calling became incredibly stagnant, the protection broke down, and there was absolutely no safety net to catch them when they fell.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the man under center. 61.7. I want you to let that number sit in your mind for a second. That was C.J. Stroud's QBR in 2025. Now, under the guidance of offensive coordinator Nick Caley, Stroud actually showed flashes of schematic improvement. In 14 games, he posted the highest QBR mark of his career. He threw for just over 3,000 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. On paper, hey, it was a statistical improvement across the board. But you have to treat that number as a damning piece of evidence in the larger, much more important debate. Here is the lingering, incredibly uncomfortable question nobody in Houston wants to ask out loud. Is 61.7 the stat line of an efficient, game-managing system quarterback, or is it the stat line of a true, undeniable superstar? That number leaves echoing massive questions about his ability to truly put an entire franchise on his back when the lights are blindingly bright.
And let me tell you, when those lights were the absolute brightest, the entire system completely shattered. 4 interceptions, a snowy playoff nightmare in Foxborough. Let this cinematic image sit with you for a moment. The bitter, freezing New England snow violently swirling in the air, the pressure cooker of the divisional round of the playoffs. With Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz completely out of the fold due to injuries, the utter lack of quality depth on this roster was exposed on a brutal, unforgiving national television broadcast. The backup receivers simply couldn't separate, Stroud was forced to panic, he was forced into impossibly tight windows where none actually existed. The result? A disastrous 4-interception collapse against the Patriots. It is a dark, lingering ghost that still haunts the halls of this organization. It is the monumental psychological hurdle that Stroud must mentally overcome. He has to prove to himself and to the rest of the league that the freezing snow of January will never bury his potential ever again.
This all builds toward a brutal, unavoidable financial reality: the contract clock. This is year 4, folks. The Texans officially exercised Stroud's 5th-year option back in April, which means the clock is quite literally and very loudly ticking. This is the ultimate prove-it season in a league where quarterback contracts now demand astronomical, unprecedented, fully guaranteed money. As insiders like Jeremy Fowler have rightly pointed out, every single front office in the National Football League is keeping very close tabs on this situation. Because if Stroud ascends to undeniable superstardom this year, Houston happily, without hesitation, hands him a blank check and a massive extension. But what if he stalls? What if he looks exactly like that panicked guy who threw 4 picks in the snow? Houston will be forced into a brutal, franchise-altering decision. Do you overpay a mediocre quarterback, or do you blow it up and start completely over while your elite defense slowly ages out of its prime?
Well, the front office knows exactly what's at stake. They didn't just sit on their hands this offseason and hope for the best. They initiated an incredibly aggressive top-to-bottom overhaul to arm their quarterback. They systematically eliminated every single excuse Stroud could possibly have. They brought in David Montgomery to finally inject a violent, downhill, bruising style that this bottom-tier run game desperately lacked. They totally overhauled the trenches, bringing in potentially 3 new starters on the offensive line. Wyatt Teller brings a nasty Mauler's mentality that instantly resets the line of scrimmage, while Braden Smith and Keelan Rutledge offer much-needed elite reinforcement. And to fix that glaring depth issue at wide receiver that doomed them in January, they drafted Jaden Higgins and Jalen Newell to ensure the offense doesn't totally collapse if someone gets hurt again. They are literally building a fortress around C.J. Stroud. If he fails now, it is entirely 100% on him.
But, and there's always a massive but in the NFL, isn't there? In theory, looking at it on paper, this is a Super Bowl-level machine. In reality, it is a fragile, monumental gamble. You see, football isn't played on a neat little spreadsheet. It is played on natural grass, deep in the mud, with human bodies that endure a devastating physical toll every single week. Wyatt Teller and Braden Smith are highly accomplished veterans, sure, but they come with highly significant injury histories. What happens to this grand master plan if they both go down in Week 6? And relying heavily on young, unproven receivers like Higgins and Newell to take an unprecedented Year 2 jump, that is an immense, terrifying leap of faith. The pressure on these sophomores to perform at a championship level immediately is just off the charts. It is a beautiful foundation they've built, but it might just be made of glass. And they will have to test that delicate glass foundation against a schedule that takes absolutely no prisoners. Welcome to the 2026 Gauntlet. We are going to focus on 3 highly specific season-defining games that will definitively reveal if this team is a true, undeniable contender or a total fraud. Week 1 against the Buffalo Bills. Week 16 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Week 17 against the Green Bay Packers. This isn't just a regular season schedule we're looking at. This is a literal path of survival they must walk.
And the trial starts immediately. Week 1. A raging, desperate home crowd in Houston, facing off against a highly motivated, incredibly dangerous Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are coming off a crushing Thursday night playoff loss from last season, and they have completely retooled with a brand new set of offensive personnel. This game is the ultimate tone setter. The Texans simply cannot afford to stumble out of the gate. We all remember exactly what happened the last time they started a season 0-3. It dug a psychological hole so deep that it forced them to play desperate, exhaustion-inducing football for 3 straight months just to survive the season. They have to prove from the very first snap of 2026 that their off-season offensive fixes actually hold weight against a perennial playoff-caliber Titan.
Now, fast forward with me to late December. The stakes are at their absolute, suffocating highest. Week 16, a bitter, bone-chilling, cold-weather Christmas Eve battle in Philadelphia. This is where the dread really starts to build in the pit of stomach. The air is freezing, the crowd is notoriously, mercilessly hostile. It is the exact time of year when the pretenders are aggressively separated from the true contenders. This isn't just a tough road game, it is an environment of pure psychological warfare. The Texans have to walk into one of the most difficult, intimidating stadiums in the entire league, under the highest pressure imaginable, and execute flawlessly on every single down. And let's look really closely at exactly what awaits them in Philly. The Eagles boast a complete, total nightmare matchup on both sides of the ball. You have an Eagles offense that features a high-end, elite offensive line actively paving the way for a generational talent in the backfield in Saquon Barkley. Trying to stop Barkley when he has a full head of steam running behind a mountain of a man like Jordan Mailata, that is a challenge that borders on the impossible. On the other side, an Eagles defense dripping with premium star talent at every single level: defensive line, linebackers, secondary. Surviving this specific matchup against a roster this physically complete and this uniquely talented in the freezing cold will be the definitive proof. If Houston walks out of Philly with a win, the rest of the NFL will be forced to bow down.
But there is absolutely no rest for the weary. The impending doom just continues. Just 1 week later, coming off a mini-bye, they are forced to march straight into another brutal sub-zero road environment. Week 17. The bone-chilling, iconic tundra of Lambeau Field, late December in Wisconsin, is exactly where playoff dreams are violently laid to rest. The icy hostility and the compounding physical toll of playing back-to-back cold-weather wars against premium NFC opponents will push the Texans' newly formed offensive line and their embattled quarterback to their absolute physical and mental limits.
Let's break down the specific dangers waiting for them in Green Bay. The Packers are a team heavily in the playoff hunt themselves. You have elite, top-tier quarterback play from Jordan Love, a surgical passer who can completely dissect a secondary with ease. You have a defense that will feature a fully healthy Micah Parsons finally returning from his ACL injury, a relentless, terrifying edge rusher hunting quarterbacks with the cold precision of a cinematic villain. And of course, you have that legendary, hostile, late December Lambeau crowd raining down deafening noise. It creates a sense of overwhelming, almost suffocating adversity for a Houston offense that, as we discussed, has a heavily documented history of shrinking when the temperature drops.
And look, if the physical matchup on the field wasn't terrifying enough, there's the mental block to consider. A historical curse. The Houston Texans have historically struggled against the Green Bay Packers in a way that simply defies all football logic. They are 1-5 all-time against Green Bay. They have not logged a single solitary victory against them dating all the way back to December of 2008. 18 years, guys. This is not just a cold statistic on a spreadsheet. This is an 18-year demon that this franchise must exercise on the frozen grass of Lambeau Field. If they can somehow slay that dragon in that environment, they will truly be undeniable.
Which brings us to the ultimate, inescapable question that will define this year. Will CJ Stroud finally silence the doubts? Or is the Super Bowl window already closing? Everything they have built, every single draft pick acquired, every late-night film session, every drop of sweat left on that Houston practice field, it all comes down to these coming months. Will Stroud take the massive leap and become the undeniable legend that the city of Houston so desperately needs? Or will the freezing cold and the crushing, suffocating pressure break them once again? This season will not just define the 2026 Houston Texans, it will define this entire franchise for a generation. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, NFL Nexus. Hit that like button on this explainer and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And remember to become a channel member to support what we do. Can CJ Stroud do it? We'll see you next time as this incredibly dramatic story unfolds.